You know, love it or hate it, the Dallas Cowboys have stolen the spotlight once again. The Gambler and his boys returning to AT&T Stadium tomorrow night to face off with the Falcons. But at some point, Jerry Jones is going to have to face the music and sort out his beef with the star pass rusher, Micah Parsons. 2 weeks away from that season opener against the Eagles, and still no new deal for Parsons, who, of course, is entering the final year of his rookie contract. He's due $24 million in base salary. The Lion, though, remaining on the sidelines for the entirety of camp. Remember, he requested a trade at the beginning of the month, and sharing that he's had no communication about a new deal. He, quotes, no longer wants to play in Dallas. That's what he said at the beginning of the month. We've all seen a back injury impact him as well. Everyone is concerned except for head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Here's more on his outlook about where Micah Parsons will be on September 4th.
I think at the end of the day, we feel like Mike is going to be out there when we can line up against Philadelphia here in 15 days or whatever it is. And, so no, the answer is, yeah, I feel good about that, yeah.
I'm glad someone feels good about it. Let's see if our analysts feel good about it, too, as we welcome in our all-pro NFL crew. Brian Wilson and our former NFL GM in Ran Carthon. Guys, I mean, even if Micah is on the field for that Week 1 game, we saw last year with CeeDee Lamb how much missing training camp really impacted the timing and the connection that he had with Dak Prescott. So, I mean, Ryan, when you look at this situation, I know Brian Schottenheimer feels confident about it, but what does that confidence look like? Is he being naive here in Week 1, saying that he's not worried?
Hey, Haley. Hey, Rand. Good to see you guys. I think it's called compartmentalization, where he knows he has no control over what's going on with Micah and Jerry, and he would just like to focus on the things that he can control, calling the plays, filling out the personnel, first, second, third team, sorting through all those things, getting the offense where it needs to be, because he can talk about Micah until he's blue in the face. That's not going to change whatever the dynamic is between the owner and the player. And we heard producer James just talk about the documentary and how the Emmitt Smith parallels in terms of his contract situation to what we're seeing here. And Rand's talked about this a ton. If Jerry's in the news, that's a win. And you know that, Haley, from covering the team. And I think Jerry considers this a win. And by the end of the day, by the time it's all said and done, whichever cliche you want to use, he's going to get more than T.J. Watt. And, Rand, what's your phrase about money and people? Everybody has a what?
Everybody has a price.
Everybody has a price. Interesting, Ryan, because you know me, I'm obsessed with this team, and I've covered them before in my career. So there's a lot of different directions we can go here. But, Ryan, I want you to put that GM hat back on for us, because as Ryan mentioned, the Cowboys documentary on Netflix has really peeled back the layers on, some of those stories, Emmitt Smith being top of mind. But the reality is it continues to paint Jerry Jones almost in this villain-like light. And we know that he, to your point, enjoys that energy. But is there a silver lining maybe that fans aren't seeing when it comes to the way that Jerry Jones does business?
I mean, we've talked about the Netflix doc. And to me, the opening scene of it, it tells you all you need to know about Jerry Jones and his penchant for gambling and for just taking risk. And it's shown throughout the documentary. And he even said it. I think there was a quote, and I'm paraphrasing here. He has a high tolerance for ambiguity. And so with this is how he's approaching it. And he's willing to take a risk. And if he has to pay extra in the end, he'll do it. And I think the silver lining for the Cowboys fans to hold on to is, A, you get a healthy Micah Parsons going into the season. He's about as healthy as he's going to be. He hadn't taken, any shots, and there's no wear and tear on his body for this season. So that's a small win if we're looking for the silver lining. But in the end, Jerry, you got to get this done. I'm sure he knows that. And you got to give Brian Schottenheimer the best team possible heading into Week 1, especially against a team like Philadelphia.
There is no window for error for the Cowboys because, to your point, Rand, they opened the season against the Eagles, who we're going to talk about a little bit more later in the show. But we do know the Cowboys don't have their top pass rusher. We also know they're missing several key pieces on the defensive line. So, Ryan, when we talk about a player to watch in this upcoming game against the Falcons, I know you're kind of looking at that group. Who's a name that we should know, especially with no Trayvon Diggs and some of those other big names in the secondary?
Yeah, and you have to go pretty far down the depth chart, excuse me, in Zion Childress, who transferred from Texas State to Kentucky, was undrafted, but he has been absolutely balling out at training camp, has flashed during the preseason games, and this is a great example, and Rand can talk to this better than anyone, having been in the league for nearly 20 years. When players get a chance, no matter where they were drafted, first round or undrafted, take advantage of those opportunities, and you can find yourself on the final 53. And you talked about the injuries in the defensive backfield, Haley. There's a great chance that we see Zion make that final 53 and be a contributor early on while some of these guys try to get healthy. So that's been a fun story to watch. I'm happy for him, and he could prove to be a bridge to getting back some of the Trevon Diggs, Deron Blands once they get back to full health.
And for me, I like to go with Andrew Booth. You talked about it. Trevon Diggs has missed time. Savon Revel, one of their rookie draft picks, who will eventually be a starter when he's healthy. You know, he's coming off of a torn ACL. And all Andrew Booth has done, he's made plays on the ball. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing as a corner that you have the most tackles on defense. You know, however, you're making those tackles, you're making those plays, and he's a guy that was looking for a new opportunity, a new chance after being released from Minnesota last year, and he's getting plenty of opportunities in Dallas, especially with a banged-up secondary right now.
Of course, he had the big pick six against the Ravens that had everybody excited. That's the potential that they're looking for the Cowboys secondary. Let's talk about a position battle to monitor in Dallas. We're going to keep our eye on the secondary, but also watching the O-line very closely. Because quite frankly, guys, this team needs to keep Dak Prescott upright if they are going to be successful. We've already seen Tyler Guyton working back from a knee injury. Ryan, talk to me about the left tackle spot and why you're watching that position as the preseason rolls along.
Yeah, Haley, it's not even really a position battle. It's Nate Thomas basically versus himself because, as you pointed out, Tyler Guyton is going to be out for a few weeks with that knee injury. Good news is that it wasn't a season-ending one. Bad news is that he's going to miss some time, and keeping Dak Prescott upright is of the utmost priority. But this is a former seventh-round pick for a year ago. We just talked about Zion Childress taking advantage of an opportunity. You can be a seventh-round pick. You can be a starting left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's turned some heads, and I think that's been encouraging. They drafted Tyler Booker, obviously, and he's flashed early in preseason and training camp. But the other thing is this, and we talk all the time about Jerry spending so much money on essentially three players at this point once he pays Micah. You have to hit home runs with the day three undrafted guys. And to an extent, the Cowboys appear to have done that. So Nate Thomas has been a fun story to watch. Hopefully he can hold up until Tyler Guyton's ready to go.
And you know, for me, Ryan, I'm going to take it to God's position, the running back position. And we could talk about Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Ryan, you know, one of my favorite young guys, Jadon Blue. These are guys that are all going to be competing for spots. And I don't think that right now, I don't think there's a lead guy. I don't think you can look at this list of names and say you have an Ezekiel Elliott, an Emmitt Smith, if you will. I know that's unfair to throw him in there, but what I mean is a workhorse, a guy that can handle 250-plus carries. So I think you're going to see a mixture of these guys, and I think Jadon Blue will factor in on third down and some of those looks in the passing game because of his elusiveness and what he can do. But then now you're going to look at Javonte Williams, Phil Maffa, and Miles Sanders, and who's going to create a role for themselves as that first and second down bell cow.
Name that is not on this list that I do want to remind folks at home about is Hunter Lipke, the fullback who plays for the Cowboys. They really like what he can do in that position group as well. So another name to watch out in Dallas. Guys, let's go to the other side of this matchup here and talk about the Falcons. We're going to begin with a position battle to watch. We talked about the O-line issues for the Cowboys. We know the Falcons have had some of those as well. But Rand, talk us through the position battle you're watching for Atlanta in this matchup tomorrow.
For me, it's the outside linebacker spot. You move up in the first round, and you take another guy in James Pierce Jr. after taking Jalen Walker in the first round. And so you sign Leonard Floyd in the offseason. Now, we've known, if you've watched Atlanta Falcons football, they have been missing an edge rusher for quite a while, and they look to address that. And then you have Arnold Ebiketie. Now, the battle to me is, can Ebiketie hold off these two young guys that are coming in looking to take his spot to play opposite of Leonard Floyd? And then not only is he trying to hold these guys off from a base down standpoint, but what matchup can they create for themselves to get the best three rushers on the field on third down and in those sub-package looks? Can he hold off the two young, promising first-round picks? That's the battle for me to watch.
And what you want to see is that have those front four, those front seven, Haley, get after it. So the secondary that I'm about to talk about can do their jobs more efficiently. I'm going to focus specifically on the safety position. We know about A.J. Terrell. He's an all-world cornerback. They have Jesse Bates, who's an all-world veteran safety. But there's a position battle where they have DeMarco Helms, who's flashed early, but he's been taking some second-team reps. They have Jordan Fuller, who came over from the Rams and played with Raheem Morris there. And, of course, they have Xavier Watts, their day 2 pick in a draft class that was populated mostly, if not entirely, if I recall correctly, by defensive players. I love the way Xavier Watts played at Notre Dame, and I think that translates. But as Rand and I have talked about on the podcast, safety's a tough position for a rookie to come in right away and sort of command things. That's why you have Jesse Bates there, play next to him. So it's going to come down probably to this week, the last preseason games here, in terms of what Fuller and Watts are able to do and who ultimately ends up on the field most often once the regular season gets underway.
Ryan Wilson, big defensive guy today. When we look at a star of the preseason for the Falcons, you're also looking at a defensive player here, because while the Cowboys can't get their star edge rusher on the field, the Falcons might have found their own. However, Ryan, there were some character conversations about James Pierce Jr. coming into the league and just some narratives out there. How has he quieted those narratives just through the preseason alone?
No, and those are legitimate concerns, and he would have been a top 10 pick, Haley, and it would have been interesting to see how far he may have fallen had the Falcons not traded back up to get him, because the talent on the field is undeniable, and I think Rand would agree with that. But you can quiet critics by doing the right thing off the field and then absolutely balling out, and he's checked both those boxes as far as I'm concerned thus far. I haven't heard any reports about him off the field having any concerns, but on the field he has been an absolute terror, and that includes his own teammates, where he was fighting guys early in training camp, and he plays with an edge that you need your edge rushers to play with. And I think that's what's been missing from this defense at the edge rush position in particular for a while now. So Raheem's getting his edge rushers that Rand just talked about, and James Pierce Jr. has been an absolute blessing as an edge rusher for this Falcons team that's been so poor in terms of generating pressure in recent years.
And I'm just going to take a quick shot at Ryan while I can, of Ryan taking low-hanging fruit, because he crushed me on air about that yesterday. But for me, I'm going with quarterback Easton Stick. I think he's taken advantage of this opportunity of them not playing their top 2 quarterbacks. And you have to think, at some point, whether it's at the trade deadline or whenever it happens, Kirk Cousins will no longer be on this roster. And this has given Easton Stick the opportunity to step in and produce at a level that makes the Falcons comfortable with him eventually being the backup. I mean, he's completed 68% of his passes. He's led them on scoring drives. I think he's thrown 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. And so he's shown, and he's proving to the Falcons and their management and their coaching staff that in the event they move on from Kirk Cousins, that he is a viable option to be the number 2 quarterback behind Michael Penix.
Easton Stick gives me Cooper Rush vibes, longtime backup, obviously, in Dallas. I'm just keeping the Dallas conversation going. Guys, we appreciate the time. Rand's going to stick around as we continue the conversation. But here's a look at those Week 1 matchups for both of those teams. Of course, the Cowboys will start the NFL season at the Eagles. They're going to watch their rivals raise those banners and hopefully come home with a road win. In the meantime, the Bucs are 1.5-point favorite at the Falcons in their Week 1 matchup.